know little about the role of the Navy in both wars, and really know little about the awarding of VC to Teddy Sheehan. It was put together to acknowledge the contribution of one of our speakers who passed away last year. Tony Reid served in the Navy for 18 years. He was part of the commissioning and also served on HMAS Melbourne, the aircraft carrier. His dad was an officer on Perth. Tony was annoyed in 2015 when the centenary of Gallipoli was celebrated. He took a little bit of exception at the focus was on the Army, no real mention of the Navy. So at a meeting, he landed this comment: who landed them, supplied them with food and ammunition, evacuated the wounded, and then the final evacuation without a casualty? The Navy, not a lot mentioned. He then put together a number of presentations to highlight the role of the Navy, and including the Navy at Gallipoli, the story of AE2, the bridging train, the Melbourne Voyager collision. So we put this together partly to acknowledge his contribution, no longer with us. I have no Navy experience, but I've had a keen interest in the Navy all my life. This is really two stories in one, a bit of a Navy history and also the VC for Teddy Sheehan. I'm aware that there are lots of different opinions about the awarding of the VC to Teddy Sheehan. Not everyone sees it the same way. And you'll see during the presentation, things change over time, and what gets done is often influenced by who is in power and politics. So let's start the presentation. The presentation is based on the expert panel's report. Here's just a photo of Teddy and his VC. And I think the Australian culture comes into play here, or as it often does, looking after your mates, improvisation. We seem to be able to do things when others go, it can't be done, ensure a fair go. We're also very proud of our heroes, and we've got lots of unsung heroes, of course. What are the unsung heroes? Well, the final hours of Sydney 2, there would have been a lot of bravery and courage to save their mates and also to try to save the ship. The Merchant Navy sailors, little as mentioned, they suffered over 20% casualties, where the regular Navy suffered about 5%, and a lot of those were made up from Sydney 2. If you look at the Japanese midget submarine attack, Roy Coote and Lance Bullard were the divers that went into the cuttable to bring out the bodies, and also dug underneath the midget submarines with their hands and divers' knives so that the cables could be put underneath to bring them to surface. Not a mention in Muirhead Gould's report as to what they did. And then, of course, Frank Lidgard, the midget submarine, disarming the 5 torpedoes and the demolition charges. Outstanding courage, little recognition for them. To give you some idea of what happened off our coast, the Japanese submarines sank all of these ships, huge number. And of course, we're in the area of the unknown and unfortunately the unknowable, what happened in a lot of these cases. And there was a huge variation in definition of what your duty was. Some officers and captains were clearly hard taskmasters. If you did something exceptional, that was just part of the job, where other people would think you should be recognized and acknowledged for what you did. So I'm given this by David, actually. Well, what are the priorities of you're on a ship? Well, first of all, fight till you run out of ammunition or you're damaged. Then if you can't fight anymore, you better get to a safe place. And the priority is always to float. A lot of ships were driven ashore in Pearl Harbor and the bombing of Darwin, so they could not be sunk. And of course, if you are sinking, it's abandoned ship. This is also a story of enormous commitment, persistence, and pursuing justice for 78 years by Sheehan's mates, family, and politicians. He, as you probably know, was the youngest at 18 and the lowest rank. The title of ordinary seaman doesn't fit comfortably with me. I wonder who made that, but does anyone need to think they're ordinary? And what he did, he was entitled to 2 awards, the Victoria Cross, or Mention in Dispatches, and he was awarded in 1942 the Mention in Dispatches. Here it is here, the oak leaf, and 78 years later, after all that pressure from family, etc., he gets a Victoria Cross, and it's the first Victoria Cross. The presentation is based on the report of the expert panel. I know Brendan Nelson. I was in the Rotary Club at Linfield. He was the member in the area as an honorary member, so he came to do various things at the club. A really nice man, too nice to be a politician. And there's been lots of books and articles written, Honour Denied. Here's just an example by Dr. Tom Lewis. So this was always a bit controversial, what happened here. What we'll have a look at is the expert panel report, a little bit of the Navy history, a little bit about the Victoria Cross. Then there have been 2 Valor inquiries to look at things, 2011, 2019. Then we'll get into the important detail, the Operation Hamburger, what they were doing, the ships involved, the attacks, his family, and then Teddy himself, and then a little bit about the survival and rescue. Here is the expert panel, Brendan Nelson, the Solicitor General. There's lots of legal issues here. Senior historian, a lot of information, and Peter Sheargill, the secretary. He's not your ordinary secretary, he's secretary to cabinets and all sorts of things. So these are 4 heavy hitters to do this. Just have a look here. I'm not going to go through this, but there are some things here: manifest injustice. You've got to have additional information. So it's quite complicated, and there's lots of rules. It's not easy to do. Right. So the expert panel decided to talk to lots of people to get the best information they can. Leonard was a shipmate of Sheehan, so he had first-hand knowledge. Gary Ivory, a nephew, Grant Sheehan, one of the family. Then Guy Burnett, who played a key role. And then, of course, you can see the RSL Defence, the Navy were consulted. And the people, the Mark Sullivan is on how a tribunal works, and then people from the previous reviews. So they gathered a lot of information and knowledge here to get the job done. So the panel chair's letter, which is the overview of it, says, well, in the 2013 review, there was no change to the awards that were given to people. And the thinking at the time was, we don't do this thing retrospective. We could open Pandora's box, and we need to uphold the integrity, the high standard. However, in 2019, the review said award of Victoria Cross to Sheehan. It didn't get through all of the hurdles and didn't happen. And then they came up with the evidence of there was maladministration. Terrible word, but what it means is that Richards, when he wrote up his report, he'd been several days at sea. A lot of the crew hadn't made it to Darwin, so he didn't have all the information, and it turns out it was incomplete and inaccurate. Then they've got some new evidence, which we'll see, and what becomes important is that he wasn't wounded at the motorboat, and if you like, was already in a dire straits before he went to the gun. He was wounded on the way to the anti-aircraft gun, and they managed to find the Japanese in the Japanese military archives the details of the Japanese attack, and something that really carried some weight was the testimony of the Chief of the Navy. Here's the testimony of the Chief of the Navy. I'll give you a minute to read it. It's I've highlighted in red some of what I think are the absolutely key words, but this is a well wordsmithed document. All All right, here's Dale Marsh's painting. You can see strapped into the gun, you can see the water to indicate the ship sinking, and you can see the planes coming into attack. It's an artist's impression of what happened on the day. All right, here's the Japanese records. They sure wanted to sink this ship. They came in eventually with 12 planes, 9 bombers and 3 Zeros, and you can see 8 torpedoes, lots of bombs, and they don't record a plane downed, but 2 damaged, which is different to a lot of the people that observed what happened. And you can see the number of rounds strafing by the Zeros. So the VC is finally presented by David Hurley to Gary Ivory, 1st of December, the anniversary it all happened. It's been donated to the War Memorial. What David Hurley summarised, the words that he used: bravery, courage and selflessness, sacrificed himself for his mates, and then described Sheehan himself as a popular, affable and likeable person, loud and outspoken for the lowest rank. He had a lot to say and very confident. So let's just quickly have a look now at the history of the Navy and what's happened over time here. Of course, in 1913, the fleet came into Sydney. Then the first battle, first victory, Sydney-Emden, the AE2 success in the Dardanelles, and by the way, the following 2 British submarines the captains were awarded Victoria Crosses. Stoker didn't get one. Then the Washington Navy Treacle. Now, when I present this to Provis or U3A and say, well, their flagship was scuttled off the heads, everyone just looks sort of in shock. What? Most people have never heard of it. Here's Australia 1 going out to be scuttled. Here it is being scuttled. And then we've, of course, had all our ships in the Atlantic, the Mediterranean, Sydney 2, bombing of Darwin, where a number of Navy ships were sunk, and then the various battles, the midget sub, and then, of course, the war in the Pacific with supporting all of the American island hopping campaigns. Here's our flagship in World War II, HMS Australia 2. And here we are, and most people are surprised by this. In 1 year, these were the ships that were sunk. We'll talk a little bit about the Yarra and, of course, a lot about the Armadillo. Let's go to the Yarra now. It's not a big ship, it's a sloop. Robert Rankin's the captain, and the ships are leaving the East Indies for the safety of Australia, and they're attacked by 3 Japanese heavy cruisers and 2 destroyers. Yarra is outgunned. It has absolutely no chance. The outcome here is inevitable, and it lays a smoke screen, tells the ships to scatter, and then comes back towards the Japanese, and it's all over. Rankin's killed on the bridge, and there's only 13 survivors out of 151. Here's Robert Rankin. Here's an artist impression of the Yarra going down. And here's the badge. We've got a Collins-class submarine named after him, Defender We. This is what one of the Japanese heavy cruisers would have looked like. 8 or 10 8-inch guns. Then we've got the story of Jarvis Bay. It's an armed merchant ship. He's escorting 37 merchant ships across the Atlantic, and it's attacked by the Admiral Shearer pocket battleship. Once again, armed merchant ship against a pocket battleship. You know what the outcome will be. And once again, it turns and attacks and tries to delay the pocket battleship, engages it to give the merchant ships time to scatter. Fegan goes down, and when King George VI learned about this, his comment was, that man deserves a VC. So nobody's going to argue with that. Here's Fegan, Jervis Bay, and the Admiral Shearer. One-sided contest. All right, the history, we had the 40 ships sunk, around 40,000 people at the peak, and of course the Melbourne Voyager collision, And then there's some closure for lots of descendants and families. AE2's been found, Sydney found, Centaur found, AE1 found. And if you look back, this is what happened in the 2 World Wars. A total of 73 awarded to Royal Navy personnel, and the Army collected 84. The Imperial Victoria Cross, we now have our own Victoria Cross. The Royal Navy finished up with 117 of those, Canadians 3, Australia and New Zealand 0. We now have one Victoria Cross for Australia awarded to Sheehan. This is in the Queen Victoria building in Sydney with a list of all the Victoria Cross winners. And just to show you how things change over time, Boy Cornwall, he's age 16. He's sort of the same age, in the same age group as Sheehan. And he's a gun layer sightseer. They're in the Battle of Jutland on HMS Chester, and it's attacked by 4 German cruisers. The guns at this stage only have shields, they're not in turrets, and they get a number of shells exploding nearby. The shrapnel comes underneath the shield, and if it explodes behind it, you're in big trouble. So all the gun crew are killed. He's the only survivor, and he's standing there waiting for orders, severely wounded, eventually dies, and is awarded a VC for his devotion to duty. Here he is, in the Victoria Cross. Here's Chester. This is an artist impression of the gun, another one. And here's the gun itself in the War Museum, Imperial War Museum. All right, let's have a look at the Victoria Cross. The 2 important words here are gallantry and valour. What do those words mean if you look up a dictionary? Great courage in the face of danger, especially in battle. And gallantry has 2 meanings, which you've probably realised. Polite and kind behaviour towards women, especially in public, and of course, courageous behaviour in battle. Victoria Cross, that's what it looks like. The reversal of the bar has got the personal details, and it started out from Russian cannons, but it's been Chinese cannons since 1914, and it's made by Hancock's of London, and you're entitled to be saluted by all ranks if you're wearing one of these, and they're a reunion every second year. And out of our 100, we've got 70 at the War Memorial in Canberra. Here's just a look at the casque bells that the medal's made out of. So it all started with Queen Victoria a long time ago. Then King George VI decided we're not going to look at things retrospective. I guess once again opening Pandora's box. Queen Elizabeth concurred with that. And then in 1981, we had the VC for Australia. So we now have a lot more control over the awarding of Victoria Crosses. Now, the Valour Inquiry in 2011, these are the people, it's not exhaustive. These are a selection of the people that were looked at. Rankin, of course, we've looked at on the Yarra, Waller on the Perth, the Battle of Sunda Strait. Ems is on the Kara and bombing of Darwin. Sheehan, of course, we'll have a look at. Stoker's the captain of the AE2, and Taylor does something very similar to Sheehan, keeps manning the gun until the ship sinks under him. So the recommendations, we think those people were appropriately recognised, no action required. However, unit citation for Yarra, and there should always be ships named Perth, Rankin, Sheehan, Waller and Yarra. And the Australian War Memorial should do a bit more in recognising gallantry and a little bit more transparency on how this all works. Here's the Yarra today, Perth today, Sydney, we're up to Sydney 5 now. And the Navy certainly knew who they wanted to recognise. Collins for his incredible work, all of the battle awards in the Mediterranean. Farncombe, who managed, I think, to captain everything. Waller on the Perth and lots of other ships. Deschanel was the captain of Australia 2, killed on the bridge. Collins was also badly wounded there. Sheehan we look at, and we've looked at Rankin. Here's, which is extraordinary, to name a submarine after an ordinary seaman, but it's also extraordinary to have his sister, normally somebody very important, launches things like big ships and submarines. Here's Sheehan's badge. You can see the Erikan gun in the middle, his anti-aircraft gun with a motto of "Fight On." Here's, we also have an Armadillo class of patrol boats. Here's HMAS Armadillo itself. So Sheehan and Armadillo are going to live on for quite some time. Now let's get to the action. Timor has gone to the Japanese. There are still soldiers there fighting guerrilla warfare. We're going to bring the ones that are tied off and put a new group aboard. And we've got a small ship, HMS Kuru, which is going to ferry from Armadillo to and from shore. The three ships are involved. Armadillo and Castlemaine are the same, typically called corvettes, and HMAS Kuru is a lot smaller. Just have a look at the size of this. It's got a 4-inch gun. Look at the relative size of the men on the bow and the ship itself. It's quite small. Its badge, stand firm. Here's Lieutenant Commander Richards in charge of the Armadillo. And somehow we don't have much manufacturing today, but we certainly had manufacturing these days. Railway workshops, everything was turned into building war material. We built 60 of these. In this case, it was 9 months to build and only was in service for 6 months. And they were really a workhorse, doing, as you can see there, sea rescue, supply and evacuation. They were the workhorse of the Navy. The speed of 15 knots, so it's not going to outrun any Japanese ship, which typically do 30 plus knots. 4-inch gun, 3 Erlikans, anti-aircraft guns. It's got depth charges. It's quite thin hull, so a bomb exploding nearby it is going to give you some hull damage. And at full speed, it's all vibrating. Just to give you some idea, in a rough sea, these ships were really a handful and a lot of movement. Kuru, wooden, built in Balmain. We were building ships in lots of places in this time. And it's going to do the ferry service, loading, unloading at night. Here it is. Here is it in Castlemaine. And well, let's talk a little about the Erlikan gun, designed in Germany. Erlikan's a suburb of Zurich. It was used in the Messerschmitt 109, the Zeros, very popular weapon. The Americans used them in their PT boats. Look at the number built, 124,000. And I just can't get my mind around firing 1,000 rounds a minute. So the magazine only holds 60 rounds. Somebody would be really good at changing magazines. And you're actually strapped into this. You become the gun. Here's an example of one, an Erlikan gun. And this is how the Americans protected their aircraft carriers in World War II. Just had these up and down both sides to protect themselves against the kamikazes. Here's the position where that's Sheehan's gun there. Here's the motorboat here. All right, this is what happens. They leave Darwin and they're spotted by a Japanese plane. They request to turn back, but are told to press on. Now, the Japanese come back. There's 4 attacks in total. They just bring more and more planes back. When you've only got a small number of planes, 1 or 2, typically good anti-aircraft fire, the planes don't press home the attack. They want to live, and we'll talk a little bit about the Japanese planes later. So the Japanese just bring a larger number of planes. They're determined to sink this ship. So the plan was to go in here, but the attack's on the way to London. So they get there late. They then come out and out into daylight, and they're told to sit there and go back in the next night. Here's a Betty bomber, one of the ones involved, dropping a torpedo. Here's a Zero, and the reason the pilots of the Zero didn't press home or attack, and the reason for the high performance of the Zero, it is very light. It doesn't have any armor to protect the pilot or parts of the engine, and it doesn't have self-sealing fuel tanks. So it's light and highly maneuverable, but the downside of that is if you can get a couple of shells into the tanks, it just explodes in flames. And the pilots knew that, so if you were getting accurate anti-aircraft fire, you didn't press home the attack. Here's an example of a torpedo, just to give you some idea. It took 2 torpedoes. Here's the Torrent. You've probably seen these photos before. And here it is, the moment of impact. Here's a different ship to give you some idea, back broken, sinking. So that's a torpedo attack. And of course, if you take a shell or a bomb, the shrapnel that explodes, here you can see shrapnel going through steel. So that's to highlight the injuries that you might receive in a shell or a bomb. So the Japanese Navy are really not far away. They request, as I mentioned, that they're told. At this point in time, there's a lot of people in the Navy that are not convinced that planes sink ships. So you just keep going. They delayed, as I mentioned, signals flashed, no reply. Kuru had already left and gone out to sea. The evacuees are transferred to Castlemaine, and now they're attacked by 2 aircraft. Once again, deterred, and then a torpedo. Castlemaine leaves for Darwin, and the Kuru are ordered back. So they're sitting there all day. Once again, they request air cover. It might arrive at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Then 5 aircraft come in. Now you've got a bigger problem. You don't have enough anti-aircraft guns to target all of these, and they finish up maneuvering by Richard's helps. So they survive that. Once again, air cover requested. Now 13 aircraft come in at 3:15. You really don't have a lot of hope here. They're going to come in from multiple angles, and eventually 2 torpedoes and a lot of strafing hits the Armadillo. And 102 get off the ship, and with all of those men in the water after the abandoned ship order, they're coming back and they're strafing the men in the water. Kuru has an incredible escape, 50 aircraft, 200 bombs. You can imagine that's got all sorts of damage when it arrives in Darwin. So a little bit about the Sheehan family now. Jeremiah Sheehan, these people, family had a sort of hands that wanted to steal something all the time. He's in a prison in Dublin, comes out to a prison in Hobart, eventually finishes up in Port Arthur, marries a lady a lot younger than him. They have 3 children, eventually goes back into the prison again. And well, all that hard lifetime didn't, he still lived to 75. So James Michael Sheehan is Teddy's father, farm labourer, bush carpenter, typically building barns, fences, timber fences, and they have 16 children. The 3 don't survive. Teddy's born in December 1923. They move to La Trobe Catholic School, and then Teddy joins his father as a bush carpenter and enlists in 41. 5 of these other brothers also enlist, 3 in the Army and 2 in the Navy. He goes to Hobart Naval Base, first experience on HMAS Coombar, then goes to Garden Island, and he's berthed on the HMAS Cuttable, the dormitory ship. And how lucky is this? He's on leave in Tasmania when the Japanese midget subs do their attack, then goes on to HMAS Armadillo, and he's the gun loader. All of them, though, couldn't fire the gun. Here's what happens while he's in Tasmania. The 2 torpedoes are fired by the midget submarine. This is the second one which failed to explode, but this is the one that explodes under the cuttable, and 21 dead. So leaves Sydney, does some time in North Queensland and New Guinea, then's ordered to Darwin, and here they're going to do the evacuation and supply at Timor. Here's Teddy and 2 of his brothers in the army. Here's the whole family with one of his other brothers in the Navy. And now the order's given, we're back on the ship again. He helps launch the motorboat. They're not lowering it the normal way, they're cutting the ropes. And he returns to his gun once he sees his mates in the water, probably with words like, "You bastards can't do this to my mates." Wounded twice, keeps firing, damages 2 aircraft, drives them away, and he's still firing as the ship goes down. Artist's impression. All right, we're on the home run now. Sunk on the 1st of December. 17 are in the motorboat. Kalgoorlie picks them up. You can see it 5 days at sea. 29 are in the whaler, and that's they are rescued on the 8th to the 12th, so they've been a week at sea. And there's a group on a large raft, which are found by a Catalina. Supplies are dropped to them, but they're never seen again. And there's now only 49 survivors out of 149. A lot of recognition in Tasmania. This is a they're very proud of Sheehan. Main Street of Latrobe, there's a Sheehan Walk of Remembrance, and there's a grants program to fund all of this and keep it in great shape, and a Sheehan bar in the RSL Club. The Navy, of course, the submarine Sheehan, and there's a Sheehan Award in various Navy locations, including Toronto in Queensland. Here's Barnett here, and Jack Bird and Gary Ivory. Gary Ivory was a driving force here. Here's all the people that just kept going and trying to get the Victoria Cross across the line. And now he's got 2 great nieces in the Navy, Madison Mitchell and Morgan Mitchell. This is an interesting one by one of the guys that survived. Every year on the day Armadillo was sunk, I take the day off, go to the pub and buy 2 glasses of beer. I drink my own and leave the other one. Sometimes when I'm leaving the bar, maybe they'll ask me about the other glass, and I tell my mates will be along to take care of that. Roy Cleveland. There's a paver now on North Sydney. This is the walk where all of our brave people celebrated. One of my speakers organised this. He's also a guide on the North Head walk, and where it is, it goes down in great company. Here's Sir Arthur Roden Cutler nearby. And last slide, that's Sheehan's badge, the Erikan gun in the middle, and the motto of "Fight On."
Question? Well, thanks, Noel. No further questions. I'll close the meeting and thank everyone for participating. And I actually.